Hi, welcome back to the Rod Chapel Show. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for joining us. Today we've got a distinguished member of the Jefferson City community that's going to talk to us about issues that affect a large portion of not only our community, but the state, and to be truthful, the nation. Today we've got Judge Cotton Walker, who serves as a Jefferson City Municipal Court judge, and frankly, he is the judge's judge. He served in one capacity or another as a judge since 1994. In 2018, he's going to be president of the Missouri Municipal and Associate Circuit Judges Association, and currently serves as secretary. He's had an opportunity to look at issues, to review some of the practices, not only here in Jefferson City, but also on a larger context. So I welcome Judge Cotton Walker.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I should note that I was really happy when you agreed to come on the show, because I know you're incredibly busy. Any person that's been married for over 20 years to the same person, two fantastic kids, coaches basketball, yes, and has a full-time law practice too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a lot, and so I appreciate you making time for us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think that the people would really like to know is municipal court. Tell us about it. What are we supposed to do here? Why is it different than other court? I'll let you.
Very well. Well, I appreciate the introduction, and one of the things that you brought up was my leadership role in the Missouri Municipal and Associate Circuit Judges Association. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a mouthful and no good an acronym there, but I became involved in that back in the late 90s, in part as a board member on a nomination from another local judge, which was Mac Wilson. Oh. And I bring him up because obviously one of his sons now is a Supreme Court judge from Missouri, and another son served also in a judicial capacity here in Jefferson City previously. Judge Wilson Sr. was involved in the start of that association, which is celebrating its 50th year.
Incredible.
So Mac Wilson was one of the initiating or founders of that organization. And back when the organization started 50 years ago, most municipal courts in Missouri were known as police courts. And it's an interesting distinction because in 1979, under the Constitution was changed to have the municipal courts come under the court system, and therefore they became a part of the judicial circuits. Okay. Jeff City's municipal court as Russellville's municipal court, where I also serve in a little bit different capacity than Jefferson City, but okay. We are members of the 19th Judicial Circuit because we're divisions of that 19th Judicial Circuit.
Excellent.
And there are approximately 575 municipal courts in the state of Missouri.
Really?
Yes, sir. About 400 of those courts are independent, standalone courts conducted at City Hall, which is Jeff City Municipal Court, as well as, for example, Russellville. And about another 175 are presided over by associate circuit judges in certain communities. And in all those cases, if a citizen comes to municipal court, they are, the city is the plaintiff in essence, and obviously the citizen or the person charged is the defendant. And most of those judges, well, if there's an ordinance that applies, those judges are elected, as I am in Jefferson City, but some are certainly appointed. And we may circle back to that in our discussion later about maybe some reforms that are needed or being discussed. But and in those municipalities where the judges are appointed, they don't necessarily have to be residents of the community. That's also an issue that's being looked at in these days. There are some non-lawyer judges still serving, which is allowed by our state constitution and statute. So that's an interesting part, and a part of our membership in the Municipal Judge Association. Some of those they're non-lawyer judges.
Wow.
It's kind of back to the old justice of the peace idea that existed.
Let me ask you, how is it that some cases are brought in front of, say, an associate circuit court judge at the county level,
right,
and some at the municipal court level?
Well, I'll give the example of here in Cole County. Obviously, we have state highways that flow right through the middle of town, Highway 50, Highway 63, 54. there's sort of overlapping jurisdiction in some instances, but if an offense, which could be in municipal court, a speeding ticket certainly, but assault, minor drug possession, DWI, code violations, if it occurs within the city limits and not on a state highway, or sometimes on a state highway, but ticketed or brought initially by a municipal law enforcement officer, then it's generally referred to municipal court. Okay. Not felonies or major crimes, because those go to county no matter where they, or go to state court no matter where they may occur. So there is some overlapping jurisdiction in municipal courts with circuit court.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay. And the other difference then is obviously we don't have felonies, and we have limitations on, that is, the municipal courts have limitations on penalties. If a person's convicted in municipal courts, many courts in the state of Missouri, the maximum fine is $500. In certain cities, such as Jefferson City and larger cities, the maximum fine is $1,000, or up to 90 days in jail. We don't sentence to prison, and we don't sentence for more than 90 days on any offense. Okay. So that's if you will, a jurisdictional limit.
Okay. Okay.
And the judges then have an important role in protecting the rights of those who, making sure they're aware of their rights and that their rights are observed in that municipal court process.
Okay. How do you accomplish that? I mean, obviously you're here today, so this would be one way to do it, right?
Yes, yeah, well, sure, make them aware. And one of the things we do in our municipal court, and many other courts do similar things, is we make sure they know their rights when they appear. Your first appearance, if you come to municipal court, is going to be your arraignment. You're charged with speeding, and they're entitled to have the charge read to them, just like in circuit court or state court. Okay. And in our court, not only do I read those rights, or on a guilty plea where jail is a possibility, we have them sign a specific waiver of rights, which lists all those rights, the constitutional rights, which we can go through here in a moment. But I also have on the screens in, our court is in the city council chambers.
Right.
And on the screens in the courtroom on each side, we have constantly scrolling what your rights are at each stage of the process in a municipal court proceeding. Obviously you're innocent until proven guilty. Beyond a reasonable doubt that the city, the prosecution, has the burden to prove the case, and that you're innocent until proven guilty. You have the right to confront or cross-examine witnesses. Confront your accuser is the language in the Constitution. You have the right to subpoena witnesses, to compel their appearance. If you believe that at trial you want someone to appear who can attest to your innocence, then you have the right to subpoena them under the power of the court. Okay. You have the right to testify, but of course, if you're the defendant, you cannot be compelled to do so because of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Right. You have the right to an attorney, just like in any other court. And if you are deemed indigent, and in municipal court and jail is a possibility, you have the right to have counsel appointed for you if you cannot afford counsel. And in fact, what we do in our court to determine that indigency, an inability to pay for your own attorney, is we have them fill out a financial affidavit attesting to what their income and ability to pay may be. Some judges in other courts might handle that through just an interview with the defendant, or they'll ask them those questions and sort of on the record and determine it that way. And frankly, in some smaller communities, they might just say, well, Joe, I know you had a problem last week, you lost your job, right. And they may know them that way. Of course, in municipal court in Jeff City, I know some of the people who come in, but not all of them. So we have them fill out an affidavit under oath.
Okay, okay. Well, and that's important because there was an interesting distinction we might just touch on for a second.
Sir.
So if, like a moving violation, right, that might be a ticket that would come through municipal court. And in those cases, a person might not be able to get an attorney assigned to them for a standard speeding ticket where there's no jail time, right?
That's right.
Okay.
And I'll tell you one of the reasons why.
Okay.
If we, in municipal court, if you plead not guilty, your case is set for trial, and then after trial, if I find you not guilty, then the case is over. The city has no right to appeal in municipal courts. But back to your question about appointed counsel, If you are found guilty, then I am charged with sentencing you. However, in municipal court after a trial, you also have the right to what's called a trial de novo. And I know that your experience at Administrative Hearing Commission, you know some of those, and in your practice, you know what that means. But it's basically a do-over. It's another trial before a different judge,
right.
Clean slate. It's not like an appeal, which is a whole other segment to talk about. But it's not a true appeal, but it is another trial. And at that level, then you would have the right to counsel again, sort of your right start over.
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons. If we're going to take your liberty, which is put you in jail after a guilty finding, then you either get an attorney or you waive in writing the right to have an attorney, even if you're going to trial, or certainly if you're pleading guilty. But with that trial de novo right before sentencing, then that's why we don't appoint counsel if it's just going to be a fine upon a guilty finding.
Gotcha.
Because you can do it over.
Right.
Sir.
Right. You still have an opportunity for an additional level of review. I mean,
Correct,
but
exactly.
it's a do-over. That's
Exactly.
okay.
And the sentencing then, again, I gave the range of punishment, or I talked about the range of punishment on fine is up to $1,000, up to 90 days in jail. We also have some alternative sentencing opportunities, depending on the circumstances. The prosecutor or the court might recommend a suspended sentence, either suspended imposition or suspended execution of sentence. People talk about SIS and SES. That's what those mean. And you might get community service instead of jail time or a fine. You might be ordered as a condition of probation to complete certain programs. If you have a driving offense with alcohol involved, you're going to probably be ordered to do Substance Abuse Traffic Offenders Program. Everybody talks about SATOP, that's the acronym. Or those things that may be required to get your license back anyway. And we have some other programs that are unique to our court that may apply in certain situations. And then if you are fined, then you're going to have a certain time period to pay that fine. And again, like the indigency, if you cannot pay your fine, let's say you get a ticket for driving without a license, careless and imprudent driving, and driving without insurance. Well, 3 tickets all out of one event, but with court costs and all, that could add up to several $100s. And if you don't have that the day you plead guilty or you're found guilty, then we have you fill out another affidavit regarding your ability to pay those fines on a timely basis.
Okay.
And we set a show cause hearing date, which is a date you either have to pay it in full or you literally, as it sounds, have to show back up in court to show cause why you cannot pay it in full. And that's another hearing date. As I may have mentioned before we were on the air, my expectation is you pay them in a schedule that we discuss after my review of your financial. You provide the financial affidavit,
right?
But that as long as you pay at least $50 per court date, or basically per month, and most people I find can afford that. Most defendants who are found guilty, then I'm going to keep giving you time to pay it until your debt to society, literally, is paid in full.
Paid up. Do they? Is that something? Can they mail that in, or can they? How would somebody?
Good question. In our court clerks, and we have 3 great full-time clerks and another part-time clerk in our court, which I'll talk about in a minute. But they can mail it in. There's a way you can pay it online. There's certain, you can call it in, or you can come to the window as you would another bill.
And if they make that payment, do they need to come to court again for the next time? Or?
It depends. That's a good question. So you're given that show cause date to pay in full or appear after you're first found guilty or plead guilty. And then typically, yes, you need to appear on that date. However, there are circumstances, for example, Judge, I know you're only in court on Wednesdays. I work every Wednesday at this time, and if I have to take off court, I'll lose my job. Or take off for court, I'll lose my job.
Right.
I usually have them come back that first time at least, and then if they have enough evidence or proof that, and I believe them to be trustworthy in doing it that way, as opposed to just going away and forgetting about us, then I might give them a different show cause order where it allows them to pay on a monthly basis and not appear until some date in the future.
Right.
With the knowledge that if they fail to pay or appear, then they can be found in contempt of court.
Right.
And
would that issue a warrant?
And that could issue a warrant.
Right.
We actually send a summons for the contempt, and if they fail to appear on that, then well, actually the show cause order, the payment order is a summons, and if they fail to appear, then a warrant could issue.
And a warrant, just for the folks back home, is simply literally a person could be picked up by the police.
That's correct.
For failure to abide by the court's ruling.
And if it's on a warrant for failure to appear on a payment, the bond is set equal to the cash that you owe to the city for your offense.
Really?
So it could be several $100s.
Okay.
Which again, if we'll talk about in a minute, is one of the problems that's been pointed out in some of the microscope that's looking at municipal courts statewide right now.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's funny. Lots of people think, oh, municipal court, and don't understand the intricacy or the fundamental constitutional effects of it. Let's come back and talk about some more of those issues.
Very well.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Please join us as we come back for the next segment on The Rod Chapel Show.
I'm Shelley Locke with Child Care Aware of Missouri. We're committed to helping families find child care and early learning programs that meet their needs. Finding the right child care or preschool is one of the most important decisions parents make. We help parents understand the types of programs available and the state's licensing rules. We also provide tips on what to look for when you visit possible programs for your child. Call us today at 866-892-3228 or visit us online at mo.childcareaware.org. Child Care Aware of Missouri, Missouri's most trusted child care resource.
Welcome back to the Rod Chapel Show. Today we've got a distinguished jurist amongst us. It is Cotton Walker, who is not only a judge in Jefferson City and has served for a judge for many years throughout mid-Missouri, but is also on the statewide organization that turns 50 this year. It's funny, some good things come out of Jefferson City.
Absolutely, yes. We were talking in the last segment about, if you're found guilty or plead guilty, then the penalty typically in municipal court is going to be a fine. While jail time is a possibility, a fine. But we also talked about problems some people have with paying those fines, and if someone is deemed truly indigent and attest to that, and especially if over time they exhibit an inability to pay because of hardship, because of lack of means. Some are homeless, in fact. And in those cases where a defendant has committed a nonviolent crime, and they are deemed truly indigent and have shown an inability to pay, but they typically make their show cause hearing dates, then we sometimes offer them community service as a way to pay off their fines. That type of program is allowed under state statute where a judge deems that a fine is no longer the appropriate way to have them, if you will, pay their debt to society. Right. So thanks to some other committed city employees, mostly in the parking department and streets department, we have a program that is allows those people to work off their fines by performing community service directly for the city. Really? It's typically picking up trash, downtown Jefferson City, and it is a early morning shift, so you have to be committed to, that's how I want to pay my debt to society, but then we give them a certain hourly rate for doing that work by picking up trash. We typically don't run it in the dead of winter when it's this cold, but they literally report to the parking garage at 6:30 in the morning. They work a 4-hour shift. They get an hourly rate taken off of their fines. They don't get anything in cash, but it's taken off their fines and costs that they owe the city. And so that's a unique program. And I will say that those few who qualify for that program, while the initial hurdle is I can't afford it, Judge, and here's the reasons why. Right. They also have to be respectful in court and respectful to that city staff. And I know that we've talked again about off the air about what's appropriate in
Right.
your appearance in the court and
Right.
your behavior in the court.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell us, kind of from, I say kind of, from the inside.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what do you expect?
Well, first, it is just that, be respectful. If you're respectful, you're going to get respect from the court, even the prosecutor, who's, if you will, against you, and the court staff, the bailiff, the security that's there, and the other participants in the court. One of those things is a dress code. We absolutely have a dress code.
Okay.
You shouldn't be surprised that a court would have a dress code as an element of respect and decorum for what is a serious matter for those involved. And in municipal courts, it's important, especially because most people, I think you may have said this at the beginning of the session today, most people who have to deal with a court, they're not going to deal with a Supreme Court. They may not even have to deal with big-time lawyers like Rod Chappell, but they are going to have an appearance in municipal court at some time in their life. And so that's why it's important to make sure that each municipal court, and in my municipal court, that court decorum and respect is pervasive.
Let me ask you from a society's perspective, community's perspective, and I know with your tenure, being on the bench and also as a thoughtful person, what's the ultimate goal of municipal court in terms of interacting with that individual, but also serving the community?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the most important way to look at that is that all participants, and that could be the defendant, but also victims, witnesses, other citizens who may be in the open court situation, see that impartial justice and fairness are given to each case.
Wow.
That's what I would say. Now, to get there, there are certain do's and don'ts when you appear in municipal court, and I know that you kind of asked me to think about those, and as an attorney that you've been in court, you've seen some of these. I talked a little bit about dress code, and I'll come back to that in a second, but the first do is show up. Show up in court when you're summoned to do so by a ticket, which is typical municipal court. You get a speeding ticket, it says show up on this date. So show up in court. Otherwise, you get a warrant. And, because people generally we want them to follow the rule of law. If they don't appear in court and there's no warrant power, well then there's no rule of law.
Who would ever come, right?
Exactly. And remember that showing up is not admitting guilt. Getting a ticket is not admitting guilt. You're still not guilty until you either plead guilty or you're proven guilty.
Okay.
Showing up, the other thing is, a do in my court anyway, is be on time. But on time, as you've probably heard, your parents probably told you this, early is on time.
That's right.
And I say that for, and you've been in many courthouses, we have some large dockets. If you're just arriving at the courthouse on time, you're late by the time you get in the courtroom.
That's right. That's right.
So be on time, but be prepared to wait, because some of those dockets do take time, and each case deserves the attention of the court.
Right.
Be prepared, and be prepared means sometimes, hey, I know I've got a traffic ticket for an accident I caused. Be prepared to, if you're going to plead guilty, pay your fine.
Right.
Be prepared, if you're pleading not guilty at trial, to present your evidence.
Yes. Bring
Exhibits or witnesses. Be appropriate not just to the court, but also to the court staff, certainly the security staff. Unfortunately, one of the things that you see in courthouses, especially with hard dockets and people are frustrated and upset, is you do see people speak one way to the judge because they know that the judge could throw them in jail or sentence them, but then they go to the clerk's office and they're rude.
Right.
Number one, that's going to get back to the court.
Right.
And number two, it doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't help anyone to behave that. So those are certainly dues. Another do is follow up. If you owe fines, or if maybe the prosecutor's asked you for information to determine whether he wants to continue with the charges. Well, follow up and get that information to the prosecutor or to your attorney if you're represented.
Right.
sometimes in our court, if somebody, example, somebody doesn't have a driver's license and they get a ticket for that, well, we want you to have a driver's license, so we might, either the prosecutor might suggest, or even the court sometimes suggests, if you're able to get your license, go get your license before your next court date, and I'll continue your case. Well, if we've suggested that to you, or your attorney has suggested that to you if you're represented, then do it.
That's a good idea.
Because we're trying to help not just you, but society overall, that each person has a license or has insurance and follows the law. So those are some typical dues.
And you know, one that resonates with me, because having been a working person all my life, you know, to see somebody literally smile at the judge, you in this case, and turn their back and walk 3 feet and present somebody else with a completely different attitude.
Yes, sir.
That's hard on everybody.
Yes, sir.
You know, so I really appreciate that. What about the dress code? Is this my time to wear the flip-flops and my favorite cutoff shirt?
Yeah, this falls under the do not do in court.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
So, you know, do not dress poorly.
Okay.
And, you know, I think I believe that we have posted on our door in our courtroom and probably scrolling on our PowerPoint presentation certain examples. Flip-flops, in this day and age, lots of people wear flip-flops, probably not the best for court.
Right.
And frankly, I will say that the judge doesn't notice your dress as much as the court staff, including the bailiff. And our bailiff will sometimes, or our marshal will sometimes greet you at the door with a, you cannot come into court with that. And it's flip-flops might be an example, but revealing tops for ladies, short skirts, pants that reveal your underwear. These are not appropriate attire for a municipal court.
Right.
Also, I will say another, and it's sort of a funny at times, but inappropriately worded T-shirts. One example I have is I saw, this was not in my court, but a few years ago in another jurisdiction, I saw a judge sentencing a young man, and then as he turned around to go with the sheriff to the jail, his T-shirt said, "You and what army?" as he's facing the judge.
Right.
Well, not very thoughtful, or having curse words on a shirt is inappropriate.
It's all about the decorum, right?
Absolutely.
To at least have some level of respect for where you're at.
Yes. Another don't is obviously you don't be loud. You're not going to be loud in court. That means talking. Even if you know somebody else in court, that's not the time to strike up a conversation. Make sure your phone doesn't ring. You're not going to talk on your phone in court. Other electronic devices that make sounds. Certainly you're not going to curse. I will say, and it's sad that I would have to say this, but you're not going to fight or argue in the courtroom or even in the courthouse. Unfortunately, that happens with some regularity, not in the courtroom itself, but the courthouse is a part of the court, and so in the hall you sometimes hear defendants arguing with each other or what have you. And that kind of goes with this is don't make a show. You know, everybody's going to get their day in court, but it's not your day to try and show how great or big or better than the law you are, or how righteous you are. If that's the case and you're not guilty, we're going to get to that, but you don't need to show off for the audience that some people tend to do. And then the final one seems simple. The final note that I made was, don't lie. And I don't just mean don't lie under oath when you're at trial, but don't lie to the court about your ability to pay, or why you didn't appear in court, or the other circumstances surrounding your case.
That's great advice. I think we're going to come back for another segment. Do you mind?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, let's do it. We'll talk more about Jefferson City next time. Thanks for joining us on The Rod Show, and we'll be right back.